All right. Want to welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. This is one that I think is going to be very helpful, and I think it's going to give you peace of mind, and I think it's going to make you ultimately better in your business. I get the question all the time is, what about sales taxes? Should I pay sales taxes? Is it expensive? Is it hard to do? What happens when I don't pay them? What are some of the consequences? And I'll be the first to tell you, this is not one of the more sexy topics. However, it is one of the more important topics. And I wanted to bring on what I believe is the industry's premier expert, and Mark Fagiano from Taxjar. Many of you know Taxjar. You've heard me refer you to that before when you ask questions about Taxjar. But he's going to come in and talk to us this evening a little bit about some of the ins and outs, some of the things of what's involved. And I think after seeing this, you're going to find that this subject is not as mystifying as some of us think. So I've seen some of the content and just some of the things that maybe, well, I didn't know that. So I think this is going to be very helpful to us all. So with that said, let me go ahead and introduce Mark, and he's going to jump on. He's going to go through some things, tell us a little bit about himself, a little bit about his company, and then we're going to talk about the subject. And if you'd be so kind as to hold your questions to the end, we'll take a section at the end for questions on that. So with that said, Mark, I want to welcome you and appreciate you've taken the time to be here, and we're looking forward to learning a lot from you. So welcome to the group.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Excited to talk sales tax tonight.
Well, good. Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in the world of accounting.
Yes, so not a guy that grew up dreaming of accounting or taxes or even math for that.
Oh, come on, man. You mean in between the baseball and all the other stuff, you're thinking accountant, baseball, fireman, astronaut. I know that's the normal list.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there was definitely baseball, but I couldn't run fast enough and couldn't hit fastball. So anyway, it really was always, as I figured out later in life, was kind of always an entrepreneur at heart. Always wanted to just work for myself, and I've started a number of businesses, a handful of businesses, and fortunately I've had some good luck. And really, what's developed over time is a passion for helping other businesses. Sales tax, like you, Mark, was something that folks asked me about, and I admittedly knew zero about 5 years ago. But I knew they needed help, and when it was time to start my newest venture, I was really intrigued about, how could I help someone with sales tax, and figured out in a very short amount of time that there's a real pain point here. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of bad information, and most importantly for me as an entrepreneur, there was an opportunity to really help people. And Taxjar was born 3.5 years ago, and we're doing very well and excited about, always excited about talking to sellers out there and trying to figure out ways to make this easier to understand and how they can wipe this off their plate so they can get back to the good stuff, like just trying to grow their business.
Sure. Okay. Well, let me do this, and I think you got some information for us. So unless I botch this up, let me hit the change presenter screen here, and then hopefully
Okay.
your screen will come up, and you'll have control over the mouse.
All right. It's a moment of truth here.
Because what I'm seeing now, okay, yeah, I see with the green background says sales tax boot camp.
All right. Yeah. So this is should be full screen now.
Right. Okay.
How we doing?
All right. Well, Mark, take it away.
Okay. All set then. You can see.
I can see. I think we're good.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So here's our goal for tonight. I've given this presentation, gosh, dozens of times over the past 3.5 years, and this is all designed based on feedback that I get from our customers and folks that listen to the webinar. So, the goals here really to give you some basics of sales tax, really connect the dots how sales tax relates to selling on Amazon, give you what the next steps are if you're motivated to become sales tax compliant. I've got plenty of resources that you can rely on both now to get more educated and as well as in the future if you have more questions. And I'm happy to spend some time taking questions as well. Impossible to learn everything in half an hour here, but again, trying to give you the basics so that you can feel a little bit more well equipped to figure out what to do, what's best for your business. All right, already talked about myself enough. Key part to remember here is I'm not a CPA, I'm not a tax professional. I have done my 10,000 hours, so to speak, on this. We've got thousands of customers. I've talked to thousands more. Tax pros, auditors, folks that work in the states. Got relationships there, and can speak intelligently enough about this so to where obviously we started a product that people really love and rely on us for good information. So my goal here is to help you make the best decision you can for your business, whether that's to comply or not comply, totally up to you, but I want to give you good information. So I talk to customers of ours every day. They're probably a lot like the people that are listening to this video here. They're obviously people who make a living online. A lot of them are multi-channel FBA sellers. So what I mean by multi-channel is they've got an Amazon store, they're using FBA, but they're also selling in other places, and they're selling wherever their stuff sells. So they may still have an eBay store, they may have a website powered by maybe WooCommerce or Magento or any number of the hundreds of shopping carts out there. Point being that they're selling all over the place. Turns out that makes things even more complicated when it comes to sales tax. The bottom line is they want to be educated. They want to know, okay, sales tax is being mentioned to me. I want to know what it is I need to do because I just want to get smarter about what's going on with sales tax. A lot of folks have heard of the NEXUS, the $25,000 word when it comes to sales tax, which is NEXUS, and they want to learn more about it, how it affects their business. And then there are folks that are a little bit more advanced. They're knowledgeable enough about sales tax where they're actually complying and collecting sales tax, but they run into that inevitable point of frustration where they just don't want to deal with it anymore. And I can tell you honestly, 99 out of 100 conversations that I have with folks, this magical phrase comes up where it's just, I don't want to do this. I don't have the powers to change the laws, but I do have the power to help folks take this off their plate so that they can, go do the fun stuff with business or just try to grow, make more money. All right, so let's start with the basics. And the really important thing, of many important things, is, to know here, if you're just getting started out, there is no federal governing body when it comes to sales tax, at least not yet. Who knows what's going to happen with the current government that's in place. So instead, what we're left with, there is no equivalent of the IRS, so what we're left with is a state-based system. So states, number one, have to decide, should we have sales tax or not? Most states do, 45 of them, plus DC, and there are 5 states that don't. So those states make up their own laws, which means 46 different definitions of what constitutes NEXUS, 46 different definitions around what's taxable and what's not, how to charge rates, what those rates are, and as well as when a business owner is supposed to file sales tax returns. There are some similarities, but for the most part, you should consider them to be all different. By the way, here are all the states, all those ones in green. Those are the evil ones. Those are the ones that have sales tax laws. So in general, again, we're kind of talking at a super high level here. Tangible items are taxable, okay? Services are not taxable. And probably most people listening today are not selling services. The most common exemptions, especially for folks that we talk to, are folks that are selling food and/or clothing, okay? Depends on what states we're dealing with. Those may or may not be taxable, but for the most part, the tangible item is taxable. Things like, interesting to know, things like shipping and gift wrapping, those can also be taxable as well. Okay, so let's play the what's taxable and what's not game. Here's an example of a tangible item. It's this lovely lamp, and that is, again, we're assuming that is taxable. Here's an example of clothing. We've got both highlighted here because in some states it's not taxable, in some states it is. Same with grocery items, okay? again, depends on which states are in and out of our equation here. Where the item is being shipped to, and I'll go into much greater detail of all of this as we go along here. When we get into shipping, that again can be taxable or not. And here's my best attempt at humor for this video. So hopefully we'll get a few laughs out of it. So this is just to give you some sense of how ridiculous sales tax laws can be. Just how much into the minutia legislatures can dive into here. And how much thought is actually put into these things. So don't hold me to this at this exact moment as we record this, but this is a very common example. At one point in the state of New York, this item was not taxable, but this one was. Okay, so, and that's because once the bagel was sliced, it was considered to be a prepared food item, and customer would have to pay tax on it. So there's our one silly example. That just shows you how extreme this is. It's not exactly as straightforward as you may expect when it gets down into the weeds of item taxability. All right, sales tax is a pass-through tax. Often I hear people say, well, I don't want to deal with sales tax because I just don't want to pay it. And, margins are thin enough as they are. Why would I get into that? Well, ideally, and I'm not saying this is simple, but ideally what the way this should work is you're paying a state what you've collected from your customers. So you're kind of like the middleman, and the state calls you a collection agent. The bottom line to remember here is you should never, ever, ever pay out of your own pocket. If you're paying out of pocket now, you're doing something wrong. Starting is for sure the hardest part. So if you're at the beginning of the learning curve, if this is the first time you've ever even thought about sales tax, it's easy to get overwhelmed, but I can tell you that you are at the steepest part of the learning curve, and all this stuff, you can learn it and it can be automated, and once it's automated, it is gone. You don't have to deal with it anymore. So that's the good news. All right, NEXUS. This is one of the things, if you walk away today with maybe one or two tidbits, this is the big one. What the heck is this NEXUS thing anyway? So NEXUS is really it's the whole ball game when it comes to sales tax. This is why you care. NEXUS is when your business has a presence or a connection in a state that the state says is significant enough for you to be required to comply with their laws. Okay, let's dig into that a little bit deeper and try to understand it a little bit better. So one of the ways to do that in my visual examples here is what exactly causes NEXUS? Well, first example is, these are the most common ones that we see. It's not all of the possible causes, but the ones that we see with e-commerce sellers. The first is where your business is located. So for a lot of us, myself included, that's we have a home office. Okay, so your home, your office, wherever your business is located, that is right now causing NEXUS in your state, assuming that it has sales tax laws. Right? Some of us have retail locations in addition to our website. Those retail locations cause NEXUS. Employees cause NEXUS. So quick example, I'm in Massachusetts. If I have an employee in California, that employee in California gives me NEXUS in California. Okay? Doesn't matter if I never go to California, I don't have a home office there, I don't have a headquarters there, I don't have anything other than that employee, that's considered to be NEXUS.
Is that 1099s too? I mean, because we have a lot of people, as you know, have virtual assistants, and they're not technically their employee, they're independent contractors. Does that skew the requirement?
Yeah, so in general, it does not cause NEXUS. There are some examples, but the safe assumption here is that you've got to be an employee. Again, depending on the states, website affiliates can cause NEXUS. Some states will consider an affiliate to be the same as an employee. Trade shows, the trade show laws are crazy. But it really comes down to, depends on how many days you spend, how much sales you have in a particular state. So we see this on occasion where customers will have trade show nexus. Drop shipping, a very common trigger for nexus. And then here's the eye opener. This is the big one. Drum roll, please for Amazon sellers. This is inventory sitting in an Amazon warehouse. So yes, Amazon does, states do consider your inventory sitting in a warehouse to be the same as an employee or a retail location. It does cause nexus. And here, as we're giving the presentation anyway, this is up to date. It's changing pretty frequently now. Here are these orange states, are states that have sales tax laws and that also have written into their law that inventory causes nexus. Okay, the biggest gray area right now is Virginia, as we record this anyway. Virginia, it's sort of up for grabs. It's open to interpretation. If we were talking 3 years ago when we started our business, there was a lot less orange on this map. And the point that I'm trying to make here is there's going to be a lot more, especially when we're talking about Amazon. We all know that other big platforms like Walmart, for example, coming out with their own fulfillment service. Look, fulfillment is a differentiator, right? If Mark and I are selling the exact same thing for the exact same price, he can turn it around in 2 days or 1 day, and it takes me 5 days, I'm going to lose that sale every time. So you have to be competitive with fulfillment to survive. And Amazon is making a massive, mind-boggling investment in their infrastructure that's only going to lead to more warehouses. There are some trade winds blowing that say that there's going to be legislation passed, but those winds have been blowing for a while, so I don't think it's worth spending a whole lot of time on right now, other than there's active chatter about how this could potentially, influence how many states somebody has nexus in. Okay, so nexus is our trigger for having to play this game of sales tax. Now, when exactly am I supposed to collect the tax? Here's the golden rule, another kind of key takeaway if you remember a couple things from this, and that is collect the tax when you've sold an item and shipped it to a state where you have nexus. Okay, so let me give you some visuals here. Here's our guy. Here's Joe Seller. He's based in Ohio. He only has nexus in Ohio, and he's complying in that one state. Complying meaning he's following the laws. He's collecting the tax. All right, so there he is on the left. There's his business, and he makes a sale to a customer and ships it just down the road to Lakewood, Ohio. He has nexus in Ohio, as we know, so he's going to collect the tax. The opposite of that is he ships an item near me in Waltham, Mass. Doesn't have nexus in Massachusetts, so he's not going to collect the tax. All right, so now look at these cheesy pictures. It's kind of funny. Joe's business is growing, and he's now going to use a third-party fulfillment service because he's got a ton of customers on the West Coast, and he just can't move his stuff fast enough. All right, they're based in Nevada, so now he's got nexus in 2 states, Nevada and Ohio, and he's made the decision he's going to collect sales tax in both states. All right, so now here's where it gets kind of just adding complexity to the picture here, but it's going to get more and more familiar for folks watching this. Now it really doesn't matter so much where the item originates. So on the left-hand side, we don't really care if it's coming from Ohio or Nevada. All we care is does it end up in Ohio or Nevada? Because if it does, we know he has nexus there. We know we need to collect the tax. And again, the opposite of this is don't really care where the item originates on the left. All we care about is it ends up in Iowa. We don't have any significant presence or connection in Iowa, no nexus, so we're not going to collect tax. Okay, now this is kind of the one that probably hits home the most familiar. Now he's really growing. He's got a store on Amazon. He's using FBA, and let's just say for the sake of argument, his inventory is being stored in 5 states. Looks like he's covering up Ohio there, but he's complying and collecting tax in 6 states total. Okay. again, same idea here, same logic. There's just more states involved. So we don't care. We don't care at all about these, really. We don't care if the combination is Indiana to Ohio, Pennsylvania to California. All we care about right here. The item is shipped here. We have Nexus in these states. Okay, that means we've got to collect the tax. And again, same as our other examples. If Joe ships to any other state other than these, okay, Hawaii, Washington, Texas, we don't care. We're not going to collect the tax because we don't have Nexus there. All right, so we understand when we're supposed to collect. Now, the big question: how much exactly am I supposed to collect? So this is, you may have heard this is a different kind of sourcing. If you're a tax nerd, you may have heard of this kind of sourcing. But sourcing is basically the logic behind how much should be collected. And again, the state where the item is shipped determines the tax rate, and their sourcing that they've written into their laws, it comes into play here. So, usually when we're checking out online, we're buying something, we see a rate, right? It says 8%, 8.5%, whatever it is, 7%. That is one rate, but really what's going on behind the scenes is that there are all kinds of sub-rates, I'll call them, that are combining up to that 7 or 8%. There's a state rate. There could be local rates like city and or county. There could be other rates like a special district tax, stadium tax or transportation tax. All of those adding up to that one number. Okay, so there are two main, for the sake of this video, there are two major forms of sourcing. Okay, one's easy and one's a little bit more complicated. This one is in about 1/3 of the states. Okay, it's called origin. Okay, this is where the tax rate is based on where the seller is located. Okay, and the good news here is that that seller charges a flat rate for every item that he or she ships to customers in his state. Now, I'll make this much more clear with some visuals in a second, so don't panic if you don't get it. The more complicated of the two is destination-based, okay? And there are 2/3 of the states use this logic, this sourcing. This is where the tax rate is variable because the rate is determined by where the item is actually shipped. Okay, so visual time. Origin sale, okay? Here's our seller in Irving. Ships an item within Texas, a Nexus state, to someone in Archer City. The tax rate, the applicable tax rate in that transaction, 8.25%, comes from this seller's location. Okay? There's a state rate, an Irving rate. There's also a mass transit tax that's effective in this location. So this means every time this person makes a sale and ships it to Texas, they're using this 8.25%. Much, much easier. Pretty easy concept to grasp. Now, the opposite of that is a destination-based sourcing system. So here's our seller in Stamford, New York, okay, ships to Buffalo. The tax rate is pulled from this guy's location. And there we have a state rate and a county rate. Don't hold me to these rates because I didn't check them before today, but we get the idea. So 8.75%. So this seller in Stamford could make 10 sales in New York in a month and use 10 different tax rates because those 10 locations all have their own tax rate. All right, so hopefully that's clear. I know I'm going fast. There's a lot to cover, but I'm going to get to the good news now. As an Amazon seller, you can forget probably 2/3 of what I just mentioned because really all you need to focus on is where you have Nexus. Okay, Amazon has a tax collection service. It's in Seller Central, and they have all of the logic that I just talked about, sourcing, what rates, all that stuff. They have that all built in. It's all automated as long as you pay for the service. So it's pretty cheap. You don't really have a choice. If you want to collect tax, you got to use their service, which you're probably not surprised as an Amazon seller. So that's the good news. I can tell you because we work with other platforms other marketplaces, other shopping carts, Amazon has one of the best, if not the best, tax collection service. So when sellers get it right, they collect very accurately because Amazon collects local taxes, you know, those city and county taxes. They also collect down to the product tax code level, PTC. Okay, that means Amazon can tell the difference between the lamp and the box of Cheerios. Not every marketplace or shopping cart can do that. Now, one thing I'll throw in there, it's up to you, the seller, to add a product tax code to every SKU you have. Okay, we've got a blog post on this. If you go to the Taxjar blog, search for product tax codes, or even just search for product tax codes in Amazon, I bet our article will come up. But if you don't assign, let's just say you sell a mixture of, you know, clothing, grocery items, and tangible items. If you do not add product tax codes, Amazon will treat them all the same. Now, if you only sell lamps, you don't really care because they're all the same. But again, if you sell a mixture of taxable and exempt items, then you probably want to make an investment into getting your product tax codes right so that you collect as accurately as possible. All right, here's the bad news, if there is bad news, and that's you have to enable the tax collection service in Seller Central. Now, you may say, well, that doesn't sound so bad. I talk to people all the time that just assume that Amazon was collecting tax for them from day one. And they'll say stuff like, well, I've been selling on Amazon for 3 years. I thought this was done for me. I thought Amazon collected the tax, paid it to the state, and I didn't even have to think about it. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. It's up to you to basically opt into the tax collection. It's up to you to also deal with, you know, what they send you. They're going to send you the money that they collect. They don't remit it to the state automatically. And the real unfortunate part is Amazon does not exactly forthcoming. They don't tell you when you sign up for FBA that you've basically inherited this tax situation. They also don't tell you how to fill out the tax collection in Seller Central correctly. So it's actually not difficult to do, but it can be easy to make a mistake. And as a result, we see a lot of people collecting incorrectly and making mistakes that we can catch and help you fix, but in the meantime, you'll have to pay out of your pocket. So just a quick informational plug here. Within like a couple of weeks of starting Taxjar, we figured out that people were making all these mistakes. And we put together this ebook that has, it's basically a cheat sheet on exactly how to put in your settings in Amazon. This is free. Just go get your email, give your email address. We'll send it to you. It also has a more detailed version of this talk if you want to get into more detail. But if you decide you want to comply with sales tax and you've got it collected in Amazon, get this and just do what it tells you in terms of setting up the tax collection, and you will collect accurately. So just go to FBASalesTax.com. Okay, so let's take a pause for a second. We've talked about what NEXUS is, what actually triggers you to have to play ball here. We've talked about when to collect, how much to collect, and how to connect the dots between collection and Amazon. Now let's assume we've actually collected sales tax and it's sitting in our bank account. What do we do with it? Well, we got to file sales tax returns and pay what we've collected to the states. So how often you do that is tied to how much you collect. So the states, their logic is the more taxes you collect, the more often we want you to pay. So these are the most common frequencies. So the most common, the most frequent is monthly, and then the least frequent is annual. And different states have different rules around what constitutes a monthly filer versus what's an annual filer. But in general, you know, this logic comes into play where, you know, the larger sellers collecting more tax are paying it more frequently. Um, filing occurs in the last couple of weeks of each month. Filing deadlines are all different. And one thing to keep in mind is that states tend to reevaluate frequencies at the beginning of every year. So they'll look at how much you've paid and say, oh, you're filing too much, too frequently, or not frequently enough. We want you to, pay faster. So look for a letter from your Department of Revenue to, give you a heads up that you're going to have to change how often you file. So just to kind of give you a sense of what we typically see and how this can get, a little bit complicated. It's a e-commerce business only filing returns in 3 states. Their volume is, pretty much the same in all states, but one state says you've got to file monthly, so they're filing in the 20th of each month in that state. The other state says you've got to file quarterly, but it's due on the last business day of the quarterly deadline month. And then another one says, well, you only got to pay us annually, and that's due on the 25th of January. So, pretty easy to get confused on when am I supposed to pay the state next time again. This is another thing you have to keep track of. Always important to make sure you pay on time. In some states, they'll actually reward you for that by giving you a discount. And it may not seem like that much because it's 1 or 2%, but it's free money, so you're silly not to take it. Excuse me 1 second. Okay. So here are the states that have discounts. We wish that whole map was green, but it's not. Hopefully the state where you're sitting today is one of the good ones. Even more important to pay on time, because if you're late, all states will penalize you. They'll do things like assess late payment charges, and some will even tack on interest on what wasn't paid. Now, the definition of late does differ in some states. To some states, it's 12:01 a.m. after the deadline. Others, late means a day or a week later. They do have some mercy and give you some time, realizing that people are busy. Okay, one other thing to note about filing returns is that once you've made a commitment to file returns in a state, you have to file those returns, even if you go on vacation, take a sabbatical, or just didn't have any sales in that state. You have to tell the state, I had 0 in sales. If you don't do that, if you just decide, well, I had 0 in sales, so I'm not going to file the return, they don't care. Texas is infamous for this. They will fine you $50. Some of them will even take your license away if you do it often enough. So key thing to remember here is once you decide to play ball, then you've got to file those returns even if business isn't good or if you have a legitimate excuse. All right, let's just talk a little bit more about filing. So filing, for the people that I talk to every day, this is the hardest part is it's all about getting the data. So they're downloading sales tax reports or even sales reports from every place that they're selling. Some platforms, some channels, it's easier to do than others. Then they're compiling those sales tax reports into some kind of format that works for the state. And unfortunately, the states don't agree on what that format is. Really, no 2 sales tax returns are alike. So, the work that they have to do in California is much more complicated than, say, New Jersey. Once they do that, then they got to actually file the return, which some states is 5 minutes, and other states could be an hour. Here are some common pitfalls that we see and could make this more complicated. One is people are not collecting tax on every channel that they're selling on, either by mistake or because that channel doesn't have a tax collection service, which is kind of mind-boggling, or they're collecting different rates. So, they're collecting accurately on Amazon, for example, but for some reason they've set things up wrong on Channel X, and now they're coming up short overall. And a lot of this is because people just don't have time to keep up with this stuff, which is totally understandable. Now, remember we talked about filing, destination and origin-based states. Filing in destination-based states is they throw you another curveball, basically. It's a gigantic pain, and that's because if you can imagine, let's say you collected $1,000 in California. Unfortunately, you can't just send a check to California and say, I collected $1,000 last year, take my money. California has a responsibility, their Department of Revenue has a responsibility to divide that $1,000 up to all of the districts in California where you made sales, because they all basically have their hand at the table and they all deserve a part of the taxes you collected. So you have to tell California, for example, I sold this much and collected this much in Sonoma County. I sold this much and collected this much in LA County, this much in San Diego County, this much in, I'm running out of county knowledge in California, but you get the point. That level of detail can be incredibly time-consuming and frustrating. And this gets, again, this is all harder if you're multi-channel, is because you're dealing with different reports from different channels. So here's an example of a Schedule B, which you'd have to file in California if you lived out of state but had NEXUS. And basically what this is saying is tell me how much of the 1% tax you collected in every county in the state. And this is, by the way, this is just one quarter of the form. It's not the whole thing. Here's where Taxjar can be super helpful. So here's a Schedule B, basically gives you all the answers, and these are the numbers that you'd have to type in. You just go to Taxjar, grab those numbers, and be done with it. Okay, everybody take a deep breath. If we were all sitting in the same room, and I've given this speech in person plenty of times, not even kidding, like this is not my attempt to be funny, but this is typically what people look like at this point. if they haven't walked out.
You mean they're not all standing down and cheering? And
no, I'm not a hero when I walk out of these rooms.
Oh.
So, yeah, so I get it. If you're feeling this way, I've actually succeeded, and you kind of understand what this is like. So, okay, let's talk about some of the most common common questions that I get, like, what do I do now? I understand that this affects my business. Okay, so there's a couple of options. One is to stick your head in the sand and do nothing. And I, again, not an attorney, not a CPA, I do not recommend this option. Number one, sales tax is not going away. They're not. I feel pretty confident that they are not going to pass a law getting rid of sales tax. And the more your business grows, the more you're putting your business at risk that if you're not dealing with this. And I'll talk more about risk factors in a second and risk assessment, how you can use that for your business. Okay, this is kind of gross, but this is kind of the secret, and this is, again, comes from experience. Thousands and thousands and thousands of repetitions in relationships with the state. The bottom line is that the states understand that this is difficult, especially with e-commerce, and they are thrilled if you comply. And they understand that you're probably not going to be perfect. In fact, at Taxjar we always say all the time, there's actually no such thing as perfect when it comes to sales tax. And they are willing to tell you that, look, you made your best effort. I understand that you probably should have paid us $89 and you paid us $86. We don't care. What they care much more about is, I'm just using random numbers. You paid us nothing and you owed us $399. Now we've got a problem. That's much more interesting to them in terms of trying to pursue money that's being left on the table, and it's why we always say, like, don't become obsessed with trying to be perfect about this stuff. The other thing is this shouldn't be draining resources on your business either from a time or money perspective. It doesn't have to be expensive. Okay, so how do I get started? The first thing that I highly recommend is that you get compliant in your home state. All right, so before you can collect the tax, remember you're going to collect it from customers in your home state, you've got to register for a sales tax license. So you actually can't legally collect tax without a license. You have to get a license for every state you're going to collect it. There is no universal national sales tax license, unfortunately. I wish there was. Then you have to go to wherever you're selling, Amazon for example, and enable the collection like we talked about earlier. So I've seen this before, but just getting the sales tax license doesn't turn on tax collection in Amazon. You need to go in there and do it yourself. And again, we can help with that. Now you're collecting the tax. Now you got to pay what you've collected and file those returns. So that's kind of the high level. Okay, now probably starting to get into some questions that people have. Well, you said that I could have NEXUS in 20 states. What am I supposed to do about that? So first, take care of things at home, and then think about how you're gonna branch out to new states. If you're a pretty advanced seller doing high volume and you are not collecting in states where you should have collected a lot of money, there are ways to make things right with the state. One of them is called a voluntary disclosure. I don't have to get too far into that, but know that Taxjar can recommend you to a tax professional who could negotiate all of this for you. I can't say this strongly enough. Do not try to negotiate with a state on your own. We've seen people get hurt that way. Make sure that once you're collecting on a channel that you're collecting on all your channels. So if Amazon gives you NEXUS, you're in California and your inventory is in Texas, and you're deciding you're going to comply in Texas, make sure that your eBay store collects in Texas. Make sure that your Walmart store collects in Texas. Everywhere else that you're selling, it's got to collect across the board in the same states. Okay, so come on, what are you talking about? Why should I collect in other states? Who's going to know? I get asked that question a bunch. Really, this is all up to you. The laws are not up for debate here, right? The laws are what I explained earlier in the conversation. How realistic is it that you will get caught for noncompliance? It really depends. So, and that's where risk tolerance should be your guide. So what I can tell you at the kind of macro level is that states are getting more desperate. Their coffers are empty, and they're looking for ways to generate revenue. And one of the ways that they can do that is to start enforcing these laws that have not been heavily enforced. They don't even have to pass new laws. They just enforce these ones. They're starting to get clued into e-commerce is not a fad, right? E-commerce is only about 11% of retail sales right now, which is mind-boggling. It's just going to keep growing. So let me just talk more about risk tolerance real quick. People that I talk to fall into one of two categories when it comes to risk. One is they don't like risk at all, and they say, look, I don't care what size my business is. I don't like the idea of not being in compliance. It scares me. I don't want to shoot myself in the foot here and have a state come after me and that kill my business. So they go out and they comply in every state. They get 20 sales tax licenses, and some of them they're paying, $3 a year, right? They just don't care. They just want it to be done so they don't have to worry about it. They sleep better at night. I understand that. The other one, what I think is a much more realistic approach, is the one that I would take if I were starting today, which is kind of a wait-and-see approach. Okay, which is, look, I'm going to comply in my home state, and then I'm going to use risk as a guide to comply in other states. So I will look at, I understand I have Nexus in California. Well, I'm going to take the chance that they're not going to come after me for that $10 that I was supposed to collect last year. But if that number, $10, turns into, I'm making stuff up here, $300 or $3,000 or some number that makes me as a business owner uncomfortable, because if they did find out about me and came after me, I probably couldn't pay that plus the interest and the penalty. I'm going to comply. I'm just going to get it over with, and I'll make that decision on a state-by-state basis. And so we see a lot of people doing that. It just makes, to me, that makes much greater sense than going out and spending the time and the effort to get compliant, and especially when you may just have low sales. All right, so the good news is Taxjar can help with everything that we've talked about tonight. So we're all about automating pretty much everything that we've talked about. You can connect all of these platforms directly to us, and we do all the work for you. So remember when I talked about trying to get the data correct and compiling it into a format that the state needs? I mean, that's essentially, that's what we're doing on a daily basis. So you would connect your Amazon store, your eBay store, your WooCommerce store to us. We'll download the data every single day and put it into that format. And then when your filing frequency, it comes time to file, it'll be ready for you to file, or we'll file the returns for you automatically. So let me just show you a couple of the really interesting things that we do. And our approach is really to give you the tools that you need to make those decisions that are going to be best for your business. Like I said, like that, that risk decision. So on a simple level, we'll show you how much you've collected by state. We'll show Amazon sellers where they might have Nexus. So we'll show them, this little badge shows where states where their items are being shipped out of, which would indicate Nexus. We'll give you the level of breakdown that a state requires. So remember when I talked about California, they're asking for sales subject to local tax and how much tax is collected by jurisdiction in California. We do that automatically. We'll help you figure out if you're collecting accurately or not. Okay, so we'll flag states where, hey, this looks wrong. You're either collecting too much or too little. And then we'll file returns for you automatically. So again, we give customers a decision. You could take that data that we provide and file those returns yourself, because maybe you can do it quick, or if you just don't want to deal with it at all, you can pay us an extra fee and we'll file that for you. I want to point out one more thing, sorry, which is see your sales taxes collected by state. We'll also show you how much you should have collected in the states where we tell you that you have Nexus. So you could use that as your guide. Let's just say this guy is not collecting in Maine, even though he is. We'll show Maine because we know as an FBA seller he has Nexus there, and say you should have collected this much. And that could be the way that you determine, okay, I'm going to play ball in Maine, or I'm just going to let it ride. And people have told us that's extremely valuable for them. Okay, we're closing in on 8,000 paying customers. There are some names there that you may or may not know. Here are some resources. So we've got some valuable videos on YouTube if you want to dig deeper onto this topic. We've got a community on Facebook. If you go to salestaxcommunity.com, it'll take you right there. This is hilarious, but there is actually almost 6,000 people now talking about sales tax every day. There are tax pros, Amazon sellers in the U.S. and abroad helping each other with their sales tax compliance. I'm really proud of
There's got to be something. There's got to be a joke there about 5,000 people talking about taxes and what. That's just funny.
Yeah, exactly. It blows me away, but I think things keep growing every day. It's amazing. And I'm incredibly proud of the blog that we've put together, where we've got over 500 blog posts which come right from customers, like stuff that they want to know about how to get more informed about their particular case and their particular business. And that's one of the things that we're huge believers in, being honest and open about this stuff, again, to allow you to make the decision that's best for your business. We're not about you have to do this or you have to do that. We're just trying to present you with everything that you need to know so you can make a good decision. Here's our phone number if you want to call and talk, preferably about sales tax, and please give us a call. Our customer success team is phenomenal. And here's how to get started. So here's the website, the URL to visit. We have a 30-day free trial, so you come in and just try Taxjar. Connect your Amazon store to us. Is it helpful for you and your business to make decisions around, where you should be compliant and where you can defer, for example, or if you're just tired of filing California sales tax returns, we can take care of that for you. So come in and try us for 30 days, see if we can help. Get an extra 10% off an annual subscription by using here this code. This code right here. So we're doing that special for you guys.
See, they're all sitting here thinking, who'd ever thought knowing me would make them some money? How about that?
Yeah, there we go. And just in terms of how our pricing works, so if you use the 30-day free trial and decide you want to use us, it's all based on your transaction volume. So if you're sending us less than 1,000 transactions a month across all of your channels that you've connected us to, it's $19 a month, and then we go up into the thousands of dollars per month. Whoops. Oh, there's me and my dad and my son. How did that happen? There we go. Speaking of baseball. So yeah, those are the tiers, and then we have this is the fee for if you want us to automatically file returns, and that's a per return fee. That's it. So went a little bit probably longer than normal, but hopefully that's been super helpful for people, and happy to take questions.
All right. Well, Mark, let me kind of go back to the screen where it had all the different pricing, if you would, that one, leave it there. And let me just kind of put this in my vernacular and kind of just see this. And again, my brain works a little bit differently, I guess, in the technical aspects of this. But for all the thing about the NEXUS and whatever, ultimately we're supposed to pay sales taxes. I mean, you got to turn it on in Amazon Central. It's a pain to pay, and once the places get your hooks in you, they're in you forever. I've been paying sales taxes since like 1989, and it's manual forms or whatever. And I'm saying this, and I'm thinking this is a whole lot better. But once you get in this, it's something that from somebody who's probably sent off thousands of forms over the years, this is the type of thing that some things are good to outsource, some are not. And I'm just convinced this is one of the better things to outsource. It's automated. It's an easier process. When I came across this and one of his Mark's associates showed me all the things they're doing, I'm thinking, gosh, this is a lot better than what I've done in the past. And that's why I wanted to have them come on and talk to us this evening, because quite frankly, if you're going to run a business, you need trademarks, you need things, and you need to run it like a real business. Real businesses pay sales taxes. And if you want to try and get by, as you're talking about your risk tolerance, that type of thing, that's fine. Deal with it as you want. But as you do grow bigger, and we have lots of people in our community who are wasting way, way too much time on this, or either putting themselves in way too much jeopardy by not paying these piddly little fees to pay these taxes. So for what it's worth, folks, this is something that I kind of was like that guy who had buried his head in the sand for a long time. And I just think, too, as we all move into some of these other platforms and things where we're going, this, I think, is a very, again, not exciting type of topic. I ain't joining a group of 5,000 of CPAs and talking about accounting. I ain't going that far. However, I fully accept and recognize how important this topic is. And if you want to be a business person, there are things you have to do that you don't want to do, you don't like doing, but it's your responsibility to do. And I'm looking at this, and for $19 a month, if you don't do it, you deserve to be busted by the government somewhere. I've been fortunate in my career. I've always paid taxes, and short of mistake or what, I always paid them on time, short of one or two times. And it's a process. And I was just telling Mark before we got on earlier, who's done a winery. And then now you're not doing sales taxes, but you're doing alcohol shipments. And I'm just telling you, these types of forms are a pain. But if you commit to yourself to paying them, then download all this information, show you what you want to do. Shoot, if you want to start out paying them yourself, fine. But, Mark, again, you were saying up to certain dollar amounts. What would you say the average Amazon seller with 2-3 products, how many returns are they filing on a monthly basis? Do you have any type of information like that? Because obviously it's not 50 returns.
No, it's not. I would say only of our larger volume sellers are filing. I would say even double digits, but most folks that are filing returns are filing at least a couple.
So if
no
this
matter
is
what
the case, and from a seller standpoint, let's just say, okay, we mentioned it doesn't matter what state, California. All right, I have enough sales for whatever reason in California. I pay $100 in sales tax one month, but the next month I have zero for whatever reason. Again, we're just pulling numbers out here. I still would need when I need to file at that. I mean, I know you said we need to file every month, but is that something that you can as a seller here, you can pay you to do an auto file 1 month when it's required, and then if it's zero, send it in yourself? I mean, how does that work? Because again, you're going to have inconsistencies. You have Big Mother Christmas. Sure. January is going to be very little.
Sure. The way our auto file service works is once you say to us, hey, file the returns, then we file them no matter what, including zero returns.
Okay. All right. Well, that was my question. So if you're that 2 or 3 product seller, you're probably on average what, 5, 6 states? Is that too low?
Yeah. If you're, I mean, it really depends on volume, honestly. I don't know typically what the 2 or 3 product seller, like how many transactions that translates into.
There are a tremendous amount. Just to give you some range to work with. There's a tremendous amount of sellers who are in the say 4 to 10 item per day level. So they're looking anywhere from 100 to 500 items per month per product.
Yeah, like I said, I think really regardless of volume, at that volume, we see if people are going to file returns, they're filing 2 to 3.
Okay.
But again, one of the things that we do to make it really easy is to provide you with that data that you need to figure out what other states you should be paying in, and then it's your call, right? Sure. So,
well, ultimately, I guess most people, I think they just need a number to work their head on around and said, okay, for a nominal, $50 to $100, and here's 60 to 120, whatever it is. Obviously, a small amount of money is something to run a business, to be able just to have it all automated and be done, and wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Here, you sleep well at night, folks. I'm telling you, for the time and work involved, it's just, even if for those of you who've done your taxes, you know what a pain that is. I'm telling you, I've been doing sales taxes for a long time over the years, and this is before electronic stuff, and it's a pain. I hated it. It made me miserable around the 15th every month, every time I did them. Of all the things to send out for what nominal amount this costs, whether it's $60, $120 a month, whatever it is, $200 a month, whatever it is, this is something, of course, obviously that expense is tax deductible, but I'm just telling you, that's something that makes you responsible, and like a trademark and other things makes you a real business. So I'm just sitting here. I've seen some of the insides of the dashboard and that kind of thing, and you can go through all that with a free trial. But I would implore you to go through and think of, do you want to run your business like a real business, or do you want to just throw stuff against the wall and hope that nothing happens, and wonder as you put your head on the pillow at night, or you walk to the mailbox if you got a registered letter? I choose not to have the registered letter, and I prefer to sleep well at night. So little things like this are part of it, and for the time and effort this saves you, I think this is very inexpensive. So with that said, all the things that are doing, and I guess I forget sometimes I've been doing these things for a lot of people were born, and I appreciate when things like this come along, of how I would have loved to have had something like this when I was running my retail stores back in the 90s and that kind of thing. But anyway, folks, I'm glad that Mark, you came on, you told us about this stuff, because again, ain't exciting. This ain't exciting, but it is as important as anything we do. So, with that said, folks, I hope you take this to heart and you think this through, and whether you do something like this or not, you need to get part of your house in order as far as this area of your business. So with that said, anybody who has them, I say we got a few questions here. We'll take those, and we're going to try and keep this to an hour, and I got a little wordy in here and so forth, but let's do, we'll try and take a few. And folks, if for whatever reason we don't get to your question, please don't take it personally. We've got several here, and if I miss you, it's just I didn't miss you on purpose. So please don't get upset. All right, here's one. I'll just read this out if you just want to maybe take an answer to these, Mark. It says, I have input the settings in Amazon to collect my tax in my home state. How do we establish the settings in Amazon for where our inventory resides?
If I'm hearing that right, how do we control where our inventory resides? And that's impossible. So,
Well, I think she's really trying to about the settings, because I mean, again, even as a seller, I have no idea where all my inventory is. And if you're going to determine a nexus and inventory's in that state, if I'm understanding,
I got you.
You know, she's asking, how do you know where your or how do you know, or how do you turn the settings on to collect sales taxes in your nexus states?
Well, that sounds like two different questions. So the first one is, how do I know where my inventory is in which states? Amazon has an inventory report that you can pull down. I don't have the directions in front of me exactly where to get it, but you can do that. If you're at any sort of scale, though, you need to do it on a daily basis because that's how often inventory moves around. And again, that's one of the things that we automate, right? So we look at that report and we tell you once a new state pops up, like, hey, you know your stuff's in California now. It's being shipped out of California. In terms of settings in states other than your home state, how does that work? It really works the exact same way. So it's just the settings may be different because they consider shipping taxable where your home state, they consider them not taxable. So again, we will give you all those answers in that ebook that I mentioned.
Well, I think I've skipped down more. I think Sandy has just typed in and says, no, how do we put in the states to pay where the inventory resides? So I think, Sandy, from what I took, is that all pops up on your dashboard and you choose to pay that or you don't. Right, Mark?
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll populate your dashboard with the states where we know that you have Nexus. If you can also add new states to the dashboard if you want. But yeah, it all happens automatically.
Ultimately, Sandy, you have control of that in your dashboard, and I hope that answers the question right. Okay, Giles says, I want to be fully compliant. Do I need to get a sales tax license in the states where I have Nexus but have never had a sale? Some states ask when your first sale, some states ask when your first sale was in their state.
If you're going to comply in a state and get a license and it doesn't, and you have never had a sale there before, that's fine. That's actually preferable. Where it gets a little bit tricky is if you decide you want to get a license in a state and you have had sales there. And at that
in other words, sometimes it's not a good idea to talk too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Read between the lines there.
Right. Yep.
All right. Saria has a question, says, as an international seller, do I need to collect sales tax? And if I do, how do I go about registering to pay the tax? That's a good question because we do have a lot of people here are from, 40 different countries, I think, in our community and all over the world.
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. Okay, so the short answer is everything that we talked about tonight does apply to you. The states ultimately don't care if you're in Paris or if you're in Paris, France, or Paris, Kentucky. You still have Nexus here. In terms of getting sales tax licenses, if you're based overseas, there is additional complexity. I can actually, if somebody wants to email us at success@taxjar.com, we can refer you to, we don't even partner really with, we just refer people to folks that are tax experts for overseas sellers doing exactly just that one thing, which is getting them set up with sales tax licenses. So you can always do it on your own, or you can go kind of the shorter route and just pay an expert to take care of it for you.
All right.
Happy to make that referral.
Can you see the questions from your side?
I can't.
Okay, all right. Well, she's got down here success@taxjar.com. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, in that too, one thing too, Saria, and gosh, I sure hope I'm pronouncing that right because I got a thing about trying to pronounce people's names right. When your name is Mark, like both of us, it's easy to to get that right. But in this too, one thing too is that I think of sales tax here as much like income tax. The reality of it is that most international sellers, quite frankly, don't pay them. You're supposed to, and I'm not telling you that you're that you shouldn't pay them. I think you should. However, the part he was talking about in there about risk tolerance, I think that's something you have to determine too. And I seriously doubt the state of Nevada is going to come get you in Italy or Australia or wherever you may be. However, again, real businesses pay taxes. Real businesses act like real people should. So whether it's income taxes or sales taxes, that's something that I think you ought to take a look at and comply with. Okay. Lee's got a question here. It says, I'm having my first product manufactured right now, so I am very new. I'm a little confused. When I buy items on Amazon, I pay sales tax. So the seller I am buying from must also pay sales tax. So if we're in the same state, the seller is collecting sales tax twice. Also, the seller will pay. No, basically the seller is just collecting tax from you. They hold it and pass it on to the state. The seller, when you're an Amazon seller and you collect it, Amazon will hold it for you. They'll send it to you every 2 weeks, and then you file your forms here through Taxjar. And all this stuff, I'm sure, is hooked up to a automatic draft. Or I bet, can you put this on a credit card too, Mark, or is this pulled directly out of a bank account?
So the subscription fees come from a credit card, and then the money that goes to the state comes right out of your bank account and goes right to the state.
Perfect setup there. So again, you don't have to touch anything. You just have to look at this. So no, the state is not collecting twice. Amazon's collecting for you. You then turn around and you see what money they've collected through their reports. It's all connected here, and then you send that money to the state. So the state's only collecting once. It's just, as he said earlier, you're the agent to collect for that. I mean, I remember over the years, there are a lot of merchants who said, we're as an agent, we should be paid for collecting, but that's never going to pass because the states will never pay that. But that's just part of the responsibility, I guess, we as merchants have to do, is that we are obligated to collect sales tax. So hopefully that answers that. But anyway, so with that said, folks, I mean, again, all of this is automated. And this is the thing that, again, go through the free trial even, take a look, get it set up, and look at this, because I've seen the inside of the dashboard here, and this is really pretty smooth, connects really, really well. Like all things, you turn it on Amazon, you set this up once, you pick the state you want to send it to, and maybe in the beginning you send the things to the state yourself. But once it's set up, there's nothing you have to do except just look at the email receipts and forms that come to you. So you're not spending time worrying about this, and to me that's the biggest thing, is because although we would much rather, you're never going to be spending time finding products if you're spending time doing things like this. And again, not a sexy product, and everybody's tired of hearing me say that. However, this is important stuff you need to do to run your business, and you can't just bury your head in the sand like the slide said. So with that said, we'll open it up for one more question if anybody's got one, because we ran over a little bit more. And then if not, we'll call it an evening here. All right, here's one. If I delete a product or cancel the brand or whatever it is, you said, of course, earlier that once you start paying, you have to pay. Do you send? I mean, you just send a form in that says, "Hey, I no longer am in business. I no longer am collecting sales taxes," and then basically they shut down the account. That's pretty much the way that would work, correct?
Yeah, and I would stress there, I would only do that if you knew it's permanent.
Right.
So if it's maybe you're taking a month or two off, I would just file those 0 returns, maybe while you figure out something else. But if you know you're shutting it down and you will never file another sales tax return there, then yeah.
Well, here's probably part of where that question is coming from, knowing the person who typed it. They kind of swap brands around a lot, and I'm sure what they're thinking is, okay, they set up an account, they got sales tax set up, they've got all this, and then when they sell that brand, all this can be even from your product and your software, that can be switched to the person who buys their business / brand, and everything would continue on. Or they're going to have to reset up different things with the sales tax for that other person. Can that person assume the state sales tax account, or are they going to have to delete it and start over new since it's a new person?
Yeah, so I mean, something like that. There's a lot of variables in play there, especially which states are involved or state is involved.
So ultimately, the answer would be you just shut down your account, you send the form, and the other person creates a new account, since it's technically everything is new from that point. So shutting it down is probably easier anyway, so you don't have any if they didn't pay it in the past or something comes up. So that's all right. That was actually a pretty good question, because we got a lot of people who were starting to gravitate into the buying and selling, house flipping of brands, if you will, and little things come up like this too, where you kind of want to shut down things under your name so another person can take it over, or if you take over somebody's previous account, you don't want to take over any of their liabilities, right?
Yeah, and the only other thing I'll add there, Mark, is, if you have any doubts, talk to a tax professional. We
Sure.
can make referrals on that, and just
that's one of those 5,000 people in that group, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, throw the question out there and say, hey, look, I'm doing this. I guarantee you somebody in that group has done that before, and some tax professional will pop up and say, hey, look, if you need help with that, here's my contact information.
I've been still in the beginning of a joke, a lawyer, a CPA, and a rabbi walking a Facebook group. Something's got to come out of that somewhere. I had to write a joke for that or something. But anyway, folks, that ought to do it. I think this has been very helpful, been very, very educational, and I think too, again, nothing we want to do, but some things we have to do as adults and business people. And I think if you do this situation is set up to make your life very, very easy. And if I were to do this, I'm not sure I would do it very differently than how Mark has things set up. So, folks, as you know, I get approached all the time to do webinars and different things, and I let very, very little through. And the things I let through are things that I truly believe in and things that I think are benefits to us as Amazon sellers. And I think Taxjar has been around for a while. They have a good reputation. They have a good product. And if it's something you want to pursue, I feel very, very comfortable recommending them. And I hope you'll take a look. So with that said, folks, we're getting a lot of people coming in thanking us. Thanks, Fawn. Thanks, Liz. Thanks all of you for being here. And with that said, Mark, I appreciate it. And thank you very, very much. Anything you want to say in closing?
No, thank you for the opportunity. My pleasure to be here, and it was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, all right. Thanks. And we'll see everybody same bad time, same bad channel. Thanks all.